If your images are coming out like this with a rather obvious shadow behind your subject, but what you really want is a picture more like this, where the shadow is nicely blended out, then I'm going to show you how to achieve that in a small home studio using 5 minutes of your time. Stick around to the very end and I'll show you how to take exactly the same skill set and transform it into this image just by adding a few props. To help me out today, I've got the amazing Chloe. Chloe's going to be the model for this photo session, and let's be honest, you've done the right thing. You've got your flash off camera, you've got a softbox because you want soft shadows, and yet, when you do everything absolutely perfect, this is the results you get. And where's my nice soft lighting that the softbox promised? Well, I will show you how to fix it in a couple of different ways, but the first thing we need to do is to make sure that shadow you can see is actually coming from this light and not some random room light that's causing a shadow. So that means taking control of the ambient light. I'm going to go to my camera and dial in some default settings. I've gone with a shutter speed of 250th of a second. That's my flash sync speed. F8 for a good depth of field. ISO 200, and no flash gives me this, no picture, which means the only light the camera will see from this point on is from my flash, which means my shadows. Whilst we're talking technical, let's talk about the light. It's a single flash throughout, and it is a Flashpoint Evolve 200 Pro Mark II. In front of that, I've got a 24-inch softbox, and we're probably about 10 feet away from the background. Now, one of the easiest ways to improve the edge quality of the shadow is simply to ask Chloe, do you mind just taking a step away from the background? So we've probably moved it forward about 2 feet, not a lot, but it's going to affect a couple of things, not least the amount of light that reaches Chloe. So I was at half power to get to my f8 aperture. Now I'm more like a quarter power to get the same result. But it's actually the edge of the shadow I'm interested in. It looks ever so slightly softer, and that's simply because Chloe is that much closer to the softbox, and therefore the softbox is that much bigger than it was before. Not a lot, but quite a difference in the end results. And we can improve this even further if I just take the same light and move it up in the air, because at the moment I've got it pretty much at the same height as Chloe, which isn't really the ideal position because light doesn't come horizontal to you, it normally comes from above. Now the top of the shadow is lower than the top of Chloe, so in theory I can take a picture without any shadow at all if I just frame up my picture a little bit differently. However, if we want to get rid of the shadow completely and I don't want to change the softbox that I'm using, there is actually a fix that might just work. What I'm going to do is get my light and move it so it's a little bit further away from the wall, and then spin it so it's actually facing the wall. So now, even on the wider picture, the shadow is as near as possible gone. But there is a downside to this picture. In fact, several, but mostly, not everybody's got a large white wall right next to them when they're taking portraits. So how can you get similar soft shadows without using a wall? It all comes down to size, because the wall effectively was making our 24-inch softbox appear to be a much larger light source. Now, if you don't have a white wall, then you actually need a much larger light source like this 42-inch softbox. Now, if you want to know what gear I'm using, I will leave gear links in the video description down below. They'll take you back to Adorama and you can find out full information there. Now, is it going to affect our exposure? Well, yes, it probably is. Chloe, I'm going to pop this near your chin. And I'm at roughly 1/2 power to get back to my f8. So bigger softbox obviously takes up a bit more power to fill that area with light, but the results are really what matters. Let's take a test photo, see where we're at. Here comes a quick little test photo. And now we have very soft shadows. Again, they haven't completely disappeared, but they are now super soft. We still have shadow on Chloe's face, so we still have shape and form. That's what shadows are all about. But what we don't have is weird shadows behind Chloe that we didn't want. And that really is what a large softbox is all about. It gives you soft shadows, but maintains that distance from the subject, giving you even light across your background. Okay, let's take a few photos like this. Chloe, are you ready? Here we go. If you're wondering whether we could have got the same results simply by moving the smaller softbox closer to Chloe, the answer is yes, the shadows would have been softer, but then you run into something called the inverse square law, which would affect your background, and that's something for another video. So I've changed a couple of things. The first one is pretty obvious. There is a yellow background where there was once a white wall. There's also this random piece of string. I'll come back to that in a second. Now the color of the background isn't going to affect the results we get from this light. So I don't have to change anything. I should just be able to get a very similar picture just with a yellow background. Now we could stop there, but I thought we'd make it a bit more fun than just adding a new background and give Chloe a couple of props to interact with. The first one is this, which is a red umbrella. There we go, let's give you that. But there's one more ingredient that adds a touch of randomness and a bit more excitement, and it's in this box here. Lots and lots of red plastic balls. And this is only a few of them because the rest of them are up in that box up there. Now we might need to adjust Chloe's height a little bit to give me a bit of room, but I think we should just take a few photos like this. Chloe, are you ready? Okay, let's see how this goes. Yeah, so you're going to need to go lower down. Okay. Everybody ready then? Yeah, all good? Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1. This whole thing is a bit of a trial and error experience. I reckon we'll have a couple of goes, and if we get one good photo out at the end of it, it'll be worth it. And the great thing about this setup is that it's exactly the same lighting from exactly the same skill set that we learned right at the beginning to even out their shadows. The only thing that's changed is the styling that we added into this. Now, if you've enjoyed this video, why not go down and give it a thumbs up? That's always appreciated. Leave a comment if you've got any questions. We'll check those out and answer as many as we can. But of course, the most important thing is to click on that, ready? Subscribe button. I'm Gavin Hoey. Thanks for watching.